The Carolina Hurricanes on April Fool's Day actually had a practice, so it was not a joke. What's also not a joke is that William Carey was on the ice with the team, and we are actually in our last month of the regular season with the playoffs just around the corner.
You're Locked On Hurricanes, your daily podcast on the Carolina Hurricanes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to a Wednesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you to the everydayer for making this your first listen of the day. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, talking everything about your Carolina Hurricanes. I'm your host, Zach Martin. I'm the credentialed Carolina Hurricanes beat writer over at the Hockey Writers. Also do some NHL coverage at the Calder Times. Also doing some baseball at Covering the Corner at SB Nation. I am also the co-host of the Searchcast, which is a weekly Carolina Hurricanes podcast, along with all my duties here at Locked On Hurricanes. Got a wonderful Wednesday edition of the podcast as we get to have an injury/practice update from the Hurricanes as they practiced Tuesday morning in Raleigh at Lenovo Center before they got ready for the Wednesday night game against the Washington Capitals. We will hear from Rod Brind'Amour post-practice and get his thoughts on everything that's going on surrounding the team. And speaking of said Caps Canes, well, we are going to preview that game between both sides. Now, going into the practice on Tuesday, that the team had a couple days off. Some guys showed up, some guys didn't for Monday, but now the whole squad is there, minus one guy. We all know that Jordan Staal missed the last game due to a lower body injury, and he be, as of right now, doubtful for the game against the Capitals. We will get an update from Rod Brind'Amour on that, but mainly that's just looking at a precaution more than it's nothing serious. It's more of just a precaution as of right now, since the fact we were so close to the playoffs. Why rush Jordan Staal back when you got 9 games left? You're pretty much almost right on the edge of clinching a playoff spot, depending on how games go between everything on Tuesday night with the Habs and the Jackets, and of course when the Hurricanes play the Capitals on Wednesday nights. This is more of just a precautionary period since we're down to a handful of games left. No reason to rush guys to make them play when there's really no needs to be one. So, but we did have another update. William Carey did skate with the group. This is his first practice with the team since the first week of January he got hurt, but he was in a yellow no contact jersey. Didn't finish the whole skate, but overall it's still good to see the fact that he is still now with the team, in that capacity where he's doing full practice with the squad. But Rod Brind'Amour gave an update on that, saying he is still ways away and don't know if he will be back before the end of the regular season, but he could be potentially back for the playoffs. Now, outside of the injuries, we know Jordan Staal's out. He's doubtful for Wednesday. Carey still a while away. But what do the lines actually look like for the rest of the squad as they get ready to play the Capitals on Wednesday? Well, first line, no surprise, Seth Jarvis, Sebastian Aho, and Jackson Blake. Those three have been together a lot recently, and they've been playing very, very well together. Taylor Hall, Jack Roslovic, and Andrei Svechnikov. This is the first new line going back to the previous game in March. With Jordan Staal being out, this was that was the second line. Overall, not too bad, but you kind of wish it was still KK with Hall. But with the fact that Jordan Staal's out, they got to find a place to have enough centers, and Roslovic was thrown into that spot. And then they also have Jordan Martinook, Jesperi Kotkaniemi, and Logan Stankoven. And then you look at the fourth line of Eric Robinson, Mark Jankowski, and Tyson Jost. Now, could you have put Jost as a center instead of Roslovic? I guess the Hurricanes have said they really needed a right-handed center, so that's why they threw Roslovic back in there for a second time. So that's why you have him on the second line. That's why you see Jost on the wing. And, of course, Carrier, yellow no contact, not really doing full practice with all the lines. Now on the defense side of things, it's still Jacob Slavin, Brent Burns, Dmitry Orlov, Jalen Sheffield, Shane Gostisbehere, and Sean Walker, with Scott Morrow being the seventh defenseman. At this point, it's like it's good you have Scott Morrow up there as your seventh D-man, but I would rather him get the ice time in Chicago with the Wolves rather than kind of playing as a seventh D-man on the Hurricanes when he was doing really well before Orlov got back. But now it just kind of seemed like you're having him on the roster as a seventh D-man piece, when for me it's kind of like either you play him or you send him back and bring up like a Riley Stillman or someone else who could be your seventh D-man and who's, who can sit in the press box for multiple games instead of Scott Morrow, where you're just limiting him to practices. But hey, you know what? It's the Carolina Hurricanes. They know what they're doing. And in terms of goaltending, obviously, Frederik Andersen and Peter Kochetkov, and as Walt Rupp always says, and I have to repeat it, do not look at who's in the goaltender in the crease for practice. It doesn't really matter. We're not really sure what that's going to play like, but we know in terms of all the flipping around that's been going on with the roster, you're kind of figuring out who's going to be playing, and all signs point to, with the rotation schedule, it's going to be Frederik Andersen against the Washington Capitals on Wednesday night. But on practice days, doesn't really matter what that looks like in terms of the practice lines. But overall, when you look at the actual roster, what the lines look like, obviously your first line, totally fine. They absolutely shredded the other night against the New York Islanders, accumulating a ton of points across the board. Obviously, you got Roslovic with Hall. You're not really getting that chemistry with KK and Hall together, but overall, Roslovic's not terrible second center, but as we've seen from how the season's been, Kotkaniemi has definitely done enough to warrant the 2C spot, but they need someone for that line of Martinook and Stankoven. And since KK has been showing a lot of Jordan Staal 2.0 defensive style hockey in his system as of late, I could see why they kind of pair him with Martinook, because they're almost not this level of Staal and Martinook, but it's still relatively good to have something like that, and that you're not having Roslovic kind of being a center of, Stankoven and big body Jordan Martinook. You're kind of having skill sets kind of matching up together. And that factor, and of course, Robinson and Jankowski have been playing so well together since Mark came over from the Nashville Predators. We all know 7 points, 10 games. You love to see it. Those two working really well together. Of course, the defense hasn't really changed. It's pretty much been the same all season outside of random injuries and stuff like that. So at least we kind of know what we're looking at in terms of the lines for the most part going into the game against Wednesday, other than if illness strikes again or something changes. Expect those to be the lines going into the game against Washington, with most likely Scott Morrow is going to be your seventh D-man in the healthy scratch. Carrier is still going to be out, obviously, since we still have no update on him. And with a precautionary look at Jordan Staal, don't expect Jordo to be in the lineup as well. So that's kind of what we're looking at going into it. And like I said, too, practice where the goalies are at doesn't really matter, but we all know in terms of how the rotation's been as of late for the Hurricanes, it's going to be no surprise that it's going to be Frederik Andersen in goal instead of Peter Kochetkov, just by how the rotation works. And obviously the rotation is going to be a very big necessary point, because I talked about on Tuesday's show, you got 3 back-to-backs in this month of April, and you only have 3 home games left, and this is the last one of the 4-game homestand, and you only got 2 more, which is part of the back-to-back later in the month. So this is going to be where a rotation is going to be very key for the Hurricanes. And, hey, you talk about wanting to get that rotation hot at the right time. Well, here you go. You got 3 back-to-backs this month, and you got the last 4 games of the season with a random day off in between are basically 2 sets of back-to-backs ready to go. So definitely should be interesting. And that's why with, keeping Jordan Staal out, you have all these games coming up, no point really rushing him back when you have 3 sets of back-to-backs starting actually this upcoming weekend. So it definitely be interesting how all of that plays out. So we kind of what the lines look like coming into practice. You know who was there, who wasn't there. But what did Rod Brind'Amour say in his post-practice conference with the media? So stick around as we'll listen to that here in a second on a Wednesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Looking for a snack that's both delicious and nutritious? Crackin, a good source of protein with wonderful pistachios. Wonderful pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts. Each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to keep you feeling fuller longer. Get snacking and get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Welcome back to segment 2 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. And like I said, the end of segment 1, Rod Brind'Amour did meet with the media after practice on Tuesday morning. So without further ado, let's jump into that with Rod Brind'Amour right now.
Well, I guess it was good to see Will Carey out there, right? Maybe in a limited role, but good to see him back out there.
Yeah, I think that's his first time kind of half joining the group. So, I mean, I think he's still a ways away, but at least there's a step in the right direction.
You get him in before the end of the regular season? You're not sure?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
No idea.
It takes a lot to keep Jordo off the ice. He wasn't in for practice today. Do you know what his availability will be like for tomorrow?
Yeah, I would say doubtful. I mean, I don't think we're dealing with anything very serious, but we're just taking all precautions here right now.
Just time of the year.
You always talk about one day at a time. As the calendar flips to the final month of the regular season, I think it's kind of human nature to feel the end coming. How do you balance
it's
those
tough.
two things?
It's tough. I mean, we all know, all year you've been building to, finish this race that we're in and make sure we get in, which we haven't yet. So we still got to keep pushing for that. But, with the big picture in mind, and so you still got to, I think, just focus. Finish this race off that we're in right now, and see where we can get, and then turn the page. So we're not really there yet. You don't want to be looking ahead yet. We still got a lot of work here left in this month.
Big thank you to Rod Brind'Amour of the Carolina Hurricanes, as always. And like I said, you heard it in segment 1 exactly what I told you guys from what Rod Brind'Amour said. Carey still ways away out. Not sure we're going to get him back. Jordan Staal, where we're at in the season as of right now, precaution, don't need to rush him back with 9 games left and all of that. And you kind of heard it from, Walt Ruff asking Rod, how do you keep the focus? How do you manage to not do what in the human nature is look at the end of the regular season? You got the playoffs not that far away. There's 9 regular season games left. How do you overcome that? And, Rod said, it's just, in the question of taking it one day at a time, it's tough because, you're looking towards the end of the regular season. You're kind of ready for the playoffs, but, the team hasn't really clinched yet. And that's what Rod says. The team has to keep pushing because they're not officially in yet. They are still mathematically still kind of battling, but we all know it's just coming down to if other teams lose or if the Hurricanes win, then you're kind of, now you know where you're at. But as of right now for the Hurricanes, it's still, job isn't done yet. Officially haven't clinched yet. And that's what you're kind of focusing on right now. It's not, looking past the Capitals or looking past all these, double headers or certain teams and stuff like that. It's just taking one day at a time, one game at a time. And even if you do clinch a playoff spot, let's say, luckily, all worked out in your favor Tuesday, then you don't got to worry about it on Wednesday against the Capitals. But if you do have to worry about it against the Capitals, then there you go. There's a little bit more extra motivation on Wednesday night as you look to clinch a playoff spot. But the job's not done yet. You still have to go out there, play the games, and get those done. And even after you clinch a playoff spot, I still think for the Hurricanes is you have to fight for that second spot in the Eastern Conference because you still got Toronto that you're kind of tied with, but points percentage you're ahead. You still got to worry about Tampa. You still got to worry about Florida. So even then, your job's really not done yet because even if you do get your 46 win and you're in the playoffs, you still have to fight for that. You still have another 8 games to go or however many games it took you to get your other win, but you still have a lot of games left to go and set yourself up for a better spot in the second spot in this Eastern Conference because you're, as of right now, going into the Washington game, 5 games away from 50 for back-to-back seasons. You're only 6 points away, which basically is about 3 wins away from your another 100-point season for the Hurricanes. So I think that's another angle for the team is, hey, let's go back-to-back 50 wins and 100 points in the last 2 seasons. That's what you kind of want to go for. And like I said, you also have that extra bonus of let's go grab that second seed in the East because that gives you home ice advantage pretty much throughout the entire playoffs. In the Eastern Conference side, outside of Washington, then you got the 3 Western Conference teams of Winnipeg, Dallas, and Vegas that are ahead of you too. So even if you get ahead of Vegas, hey, that's only 2 teams. But even then, if you finish top 5 in the NHL and you only have Washington and 3 Western Conference teams ahead of you, you still put yourself in a good spot to only have 4 other teams that might be ahead of you in terms of home ice advantage going through the playoffs. So that's the one thing where, like what Rod said, it's going to be tough. You're going to have to not overlook every game, and you have to go in and still do your business and still do your job because you're not clinched, you're not officially in yet, and you have all these other games you got to get ready for. Because there's no point of taking your foot off the gas with 9 games left, and then you're limping into the playoffs because you played 500 hockey for the last 9 games, you didn't really you set yourself up to having to try to find an extra gear going into the playoffs. This is where even with 9 games to go, you still have to find a way to play your game. Are you going to win all 9? Probably not. But if you take at least 5 out of the 9 or 6 out of the 9, then hey, you're setting yourself up pretty good to have a good finish to the regular season and setting yourself up for a playoff, good playoff run. And like I said, by that point, if you get enough, like I said, you only need 3 more wins to get 100, and you only need 5 more to get 50 on the season. So, like I said, if you win 5 in the next 9, boom, there's your 50 wins on the season, and you're easily above 100 points. So that's kind of the goal right now for the Hurricanes. If you don't win all of them, at least win 5, and then you give yourself a great opportunity to finish with 50 wins, and you're automatically at 100 points. And that's not even including all your, overtime shootout loss points in there as well. I mean, thankfully the Hurricanes only have 4 of those, so they're not, overtime merchants like a lot of these other teams who find a way to get into the playoffs where they have like 11 or 12 bonus points just because of losing an overtime or a shootout. The Hurricanes, for the most part, do get a lot of their wins in regulation. Would you like to see a little bit less losses? I mean, yeah, but you're only talking like 24 out of the entire season, so that's still pretty good. So for the Hurricanes, like I said, you got 9 games left. There's no point of overlooking any other games. You keep your foot on the gas, keep doing your job, and all you need to do at that point is set yourself up to finish on a high note, finish on a good foot, at least get 5 out of these next 9, and then you're ready to go for the playoffs. And the other main focus is, and I've been saying it for weeks now, get your special teams going and start winning on the road, because out of the 9 games, you have 6 on the road in the month of April. This sets you up perfectly to take your 16-3 road record and giving you the opportunity to finish with an over 500 record on the road, which is something they really need to do. And currently, before going into Washington, they are on a 4-game streak of having power play goals. Will they get another 9? Probably not, for sure. But if you at least get a power play goal at least 4 or 5 times at the minimum in the next 9, then you're still setting yourself up good in that aspect as well. So there's still a lot of things that the Hurricanes definitely need to work on. There's no point of changing what they're doing or taking their foot off the gas and overlooking games, because it just doesn't make sense to do that with this point in the season, because you're not like all these other teams who are basically either eliminated or close to it. You still have a lot to fight for. You still have a lot of implications in terms of your playoff seed and making sure you're getting hot and staying hot at the right time going into the playoffs, because the last thing you want to do is take your foot off the gas and then try to find that gear when it's round 1 of the 2025 NHL playoffs. So that being said, don't overlook certain games. Well, the Hurricanes definitely don't want to overlook this game coming up on Wednesday night against the Washington Capitals. So stick around, as we'll talk about that here in a second on a Wednesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, is easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just building it, isn't a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing money and start building wealth. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for half off your first year. Welcome back to segment 3 of Locked On Hurricanes, your team every day. So like I said at the end of segment 2, the Carolina Hurricanes are back after 2 days off, and they're going to be taking on the Washington Capitals. This is the penultimate game for the Hurricanes against the Washington Capitals before they go back to Washington on April 10th, which is next Thursday. The season series is tied 1-1, Carolina being Washington 4-2 back on November 3rd, while Washington beat Carolina back on December 20th. Washington Capitals already clinched a playoff spot, already looking to go secure that division, because as they are right now, they are very far ahead of the Hurricanes with 9 points with 9 games to go. Washington 47-17-9. Your Carolina Hurricanes are 45-24-4. This game is a 7 p.m. Eastern start time, but it will be on TNT, True TV, and FanDuel Sports South, depending on how all that works out for you guys in terms of your coverage. In the last 5 games, who's been doing what? And as of the recording on Tuesday night, Alexander Ovechkin already scored another goal, so he's got 8 points, 4 goals in the last 5 games, along with 4 assists. Basically, Alexander Ovechkin's doing everything for the Washington Capitals. So there you go. Now he's 3 away from tying, 4 from beating the record for Wayne Gretzky's scoring title. For the Carolina Hurricanes, Seth Jarvis, 6 points, 4 assists. Taylor Hall with 5 goals. Taylor Hall's been on an absolute fire. And Seth Jarvis, well, he can't stop scoring shorties because he's Seth Jarvis. Now, what's the tail of the tape say? Well, Capitals 15th ranked power play, 21.8% compared to Carolina's 18.5, which is 25th. However, penalty kill wise, 2 top 5 teams. Washington's 5th, 82.2, while Carolina Hurricanes are 2nd at 84.7. Now comes the goals for and goals against. This is going to be a very tough battle for the Carolina Hurricanes, as the Washington Capitals are the number 1 team in the NHL with goals for at 3.63, while the Hurricanes only give up 2.66 per game, which is 8th in the NHL. On the flip side, Carolina, 3.26 goals per game, putting them 7th in the NHL. However, Washington gives up only 2.64, which actually ranks them 6th. So in terms of goals for and goals against, the Capitals score a lot and don't give up a lot. Same thing for the Hurricanes, but the Capitals do have them beat on both sides of the puck on that. Now, in the last 10, how are both teams faring? Well, the Capitals are on a 3-game losing streak going into their game against Boston on Tuesday night. But before that, they did win 4 in a row against San Jose, Detroit, Philadelphia, and Florida. So they are 6-3-1. The Hurricanes, well, they've won their last 2 games, being Montreal and the New York Islanders. Did have a little on-off with Nashville, Anaheim, and the LA Kings. But this was part of the California trip that also saw them having 8 games in a row, so winning 8 games. So they are 8-2-0 in their last 10. Goaltending matchup. We already know that Frederick Anderson's going to be in net for the Hurricanes, 12-5-0, with the 201 goals against, a .919 save percentage, and a shutout. I would not be surprised if you see Logan Thompson going for the Washington Capitals, 31-5-6, a 243 goals against, a .912 save percentage, and 2 shutouts. Of course, that depends on if they had him going on Tuesday night. If they did, well, it's going to be Charlie Lindgren, 16-12-3, a 265, a 900 save percentage with a shutout. So that's kind of what you're looking at in terms of the goaltending matchups in the last 10. Now, who are the players to watch on both sides? Well, obviously Alexander Ovechkin. He just got his 38th goal in 58 games. He is now really close to being Wayne Gretzky's record. If you're the Carolina Hurricanes, don't give him the opportunity to do it against you. If he scores 1, That's fine. Let him take care of it in between the two games between both teams. Obviously, Obi's definitely one to watch out for. Like I said, he's been on an absolute tear, even missing a lot of games. Other guy you got to watch out for, well, Dylan Strom, 70 points in 73 games, 23 goals, 47 assists. And then another one I was really surprised that this guy has gone absolutely off this year is Alexei Protas. How about 65 points in 73 games this season, 30 goals, 35 assists, and this plus-minus stat is absolutely staggering. He is a plus 40 on the season for the Washington Capitals, and the other guy who's really close to him in that, how about Pierre-Luc Dubois, who's all of a sudden figured out how to play hockey, with a lot of teams wondering where was that when he was with them. How about a plus 30, 62 points in 73 games, 43 assists? Okay, sure, that makes sense. PLD can't do it in Winnipeg, Columbus, or the Kings, goes to the Washington Capitals, has a plus 30 season, which is not even the best on the team. He's still 10 behind Protas, who's a plus 40, but all of a sudden Dubois knows how to score goals and have 62 points on the Washington Capitals. So those are definitely the four you need to watch out for. In terms of defense, hey, Jacob Strickland and John Carlson, plus 20 and plus 22. And both those guys have 46 points. But Chikrin's got 20 goals and 26 assists. Another one that's absolutely insane in terms of his plus minus. How about Rasmus Sandin, plus 24? And Matt Roy, former King, plus 28. Just plus 20s everywhere across the board for the Capitals. Absolutely bonkers type stuff. For the Carolina Hurricanes, who should you be watching for? Well, for me personally, yeah, you have Sebastian Aho. He's 1 point off from 70, of course, and he's also 2 goals away from 30. He's definitely one of the guys to watch, but for me, it's got to be Seth Jarvis. 29 goals, 29 assists, 58 points. He is only 1 goal and 1 assist away from having 30, and then, of course, 2 points away from 60 for him being close to a back-to-back 30-goal, 60-point season. Obviously, definitely one you need to watch out for that. For this one, well, Dmitry Orlov going against his former team once again, 26 points in 60 games, did have a goal against New York Islanders, so definitely one you need to watch in this one for sure. But it should be an interesting game for the Carolina Hurricanes as they look to kind of clinch their spot in the playoffs. Of course, it all depends on how it goes on Tuesday night with Montreal and the Columbus Blue Jackets. So as of right now, nothing's really known for sure yet. But when you do watch this, hopefully we know if either one of those teams lost, hey, the Kings are in. If not, well, the Hurricanes got some work to do on Wednesday night against the Washington Capitals, but it should be a fun one to watch, which could see some potential playoff matchups in round 2 of the 2025 playoffs. Of course, you don't want to overlook the first round, but you could be seeing a preview of what the second round could potentially look like between these two sides. But guys, that will wrap up the Wednesday episode of Locked On Hurricanes. Thank you for making your first listen. For your next listen, go check out Locked On NHL Podcast, bringing you the daily league-wide stories that matter with the local coverage you love from Locked On. Find Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. If you want to keep up with me, I'm at OneShoeZach on X. The podcast is LO_Hurricanes. I'm also on Blue Sky at the Zachary Martin, where I do have link trees in my bios, where you can check out all of my articles at thehockeywriters.com when it comes to the Carolina Hurricanes, thecaldertimes.com if you want to check out some AHL stuff. Like I said, I also got some baseball going on at coverinthecorner.com at SB Nation, talking about the Cleveland Guardians. I'm also, like I said, I'm the co-host on the Surgecast. You can check that out on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. For Locked On Hurricanes, Spotify, Google, Apple, iHeartRadio, follow, subscribe, leave a 5-star review, because I might just read it on the show. For YouTube, well, it's Locked On Hurricanes. Subscribe, hit the bell notification so you don't miss the show. Hit the thumbs up to let me know if you like the show as well. Make sure to share with other Kinks so they become everydayers just like you. But hope everyone enjoys the Wednesday edition of Locked On Hurricanes. Enjoy your Wednesday and have fun watching your Carolina Hurricanes take on the Washington Capitals on Wednesday night. And until next time, as always, let's go Canes.